This week we are going to be talking about the internet and network security. The internet, the internet is the most used network in the world. It is also one of the least understood. There is no one network that is the internet. Instead, the internet is a network of networks, a set of separate and distinct networks operated by various national and state government agencies, non-profit organizations, and for-profit corporations. The Internet exists only to the extent that these thousands of separate networks agree to use Internet protocols and to exchange data packets among one another. When you are on the Internet, your computer, uh, your iPad, smartphone, or any other device is connected to the internet of an internet through an internet service provider that provides network services for you. Messages flow between your client device and the internet service provider's network. Suppose you request a web page, say on CNN.com, a website that is outside of your ISP's network. Your HTTP request flows from your device through your ISP's network and through other networks that link your ISP's network to the other network of the ISP that provides internet services for CNN. Each of these networks is separate and charges their own customers for internet access, but permit traffic from other networks to flow through them. In many ways, the internet is like the universe. Each of us works in our own planet with its own rules, but each planet is interconnected with all the other planets. The internet is simultaneously a strict, rigidly controlled club in which the deviance from the rules is not tolerated, and a freewheeling, open marketplace of ideas is also encouraged. All networks that connect to the internet must rigidly conform to an unyielding set of standards for the transport and network layers. Without these standards, data communication would not be possible. At the same time, content and application protocols are developed freely and without restriction, and quite literally, anyone in the world is allowed to comment on proposed changes. The internet is a hierarchical uh, structure. At the top are the very large national internet service providers, such as AT&T and Sprint, that are responsible for large internet networks. These national ISPs, called Tier 1 ISPs, connect together and exchange data at network access points. For example, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, Quest are all at level 1. And Global Crossing is another example of Tier 1 ISP. So Tier 1 ISPs sell their services to Tier 2 and 3 ISPs. Network access points were originally designed to connect only large Tier 1 ISPs. These ISPs in turn provide services for their customers and also to regional ISPs such as Cogent Communication, Comcast, Telecom. These are some examples of Tier 2. These Tier 2 ISPs rely on the Tier 1 ISPs to transmit their messages to ISPs in other countries. Tier 2 ISPs in turn provide services to their customers and to local ISPs who sell internet access to individuals. As the number of ISPs grow, a new form of network access point called a metropolitan area exchange has emerged. MAEs are smaller versions of NAPs and typically link a set of regional ISPs whose networks come together in major cities. In general, ISPs at the same level do not charge one another for transferring messages they exchange. That is, a national Tier 1 ISP does not charge another national Tier 1 ISP to transmit its messages. This is called peering. It is peering that makes the internet work and has led to the belief that the internet is free. This is true to some extent, but higher level ISPs normally charge lower level ISPs to transmit their data. That is, a Tier 1 will charge a Tier 2, and a Tier 2 will charge a Tier 3. And of course, any ISP will charge individuals like you and I for access. Network access points, as we discussed, connect Tier 1 ISPs together. Sometimes large Tier 2 and Tier 3 ISPs also have access directly to NAPs. For example, Indiana University, which provides services to about 40,000 individuals, connects directly to the National uh, Chicago network access point. About a dozen NAPs or network access points are currently in use in the US and are run by common carriers such as Sprint and AT&T. Metropolitan area exchanges connect Tier 2 ISPs together. In terms of how you actually connect to an ISP, this is done through point of presence, which is a place at which ISP provides services to its customers. Individuals connect to this point of presence typically through cable or DSL, and they will need a user ID and password in order to access remotely. Once logged in, the users are then able to send and receive packets on the internet. Corporate users, on the other hand, typically access the point of presence using T1, T3, or ATM or S3 connections, which are provided by a common carrier. We discussed some of these technologies in week 5. Next, we are going to look at security. Business and government have always been concerned with physical and information security. They have protected physical assets with locks, barriers, guards, and the military since organized societies began. They have also guarded their plans and information with coding systems for at least 3,500 years. What has changed in the last 50 years is the introduction of computers and the internet. The rise of the internet has completely redefined the nature of information security. Now companies face global threats to their networks and, more importantly, to their data. Viruses and worms have long been a problem, but credit card theft and identity theft, two of the fastest growing crimes, pose immense liability to firms who fail to protect their customers' data. Laws have been also slow to catch up. Laws have been slow to catch up despite the fact that breaking into a computer in the United States, even without causing damage, is now a federal crime punishable by a fine and or imprisonment. Nonetheless, we have a new kind of trans-border cybercrime against which laws may apply but will be very difficult to enforce. The United States and Canada may extradite and allow prosecution of digital criminals operating within their borders, but investigating, enforcing, and prosecuting transnational cybercrime across different borders is much more challenging. And even when someone is caught, they face lighter sentences than bank robbers. Computer security has become increasingly important over the last 10 years with the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act (SOX) and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act (HIPAA). The number of Internet security incidents reported to the Computer Emergency Response Team doubled every year up until 2003, when STEP stopped keeping track of records because there were so many incidents that it was no longer meaningful to keep track. CERT or Computer Emergency Response Team was established by the U.S. Department of Defense at Carnegie Mellon University with a mission to work with the Internet community to respond to computer security problems, raise awareness of computer security issues, and prevent security breaches. It is interesting to note that worldwide annual information security losses may actually be $2 trillion. Approximately 70% of organizations experienced security breaches in the last 12 months. The median number of security incidents was 4, but the top 5% of organizations were attacked more than 100 times a year. About 60% reported they suffered a measurable financial loss due to a security problem, with the average loss being about 350,000, which is significantly higher than in previous years. The median loss was much smaller, under $50,000. Experts estimate that worldwide annual losses due to security problems exceed $2 trillion. Some of the notable security breaches of 2010 were the AT&T website hack that exposed the email addresses of 114,000 iPad 3G owners, and the Aurora attack that targeted Google and affected dozens of other organizations that collaborate with Google. Part of the reason for the increase in the computer security problems is the increasing availability of sophisticated tools for breaking into networks. 10 years ago, someone wanting to break into a network needed to have some expertise. Today, even experienced attackers can download tools from a website and immediately begin trying to break into networks. Two other factors are also at work increasing security problems. First, organized crime has recognized the value of computer networks. Criminal organizations have launched spam campaigns with fraudulent products and claims, created virus to steal information, and even engaged in extortion by threatening to disable a small company's network unless it pays them a fee. Computer crime is less risky than traditional crime and also pays a lot better. Secondly, there is a considerable evidence that the Chinese military and security services have engaged in major ongoing cyber warfare campaign against military and government targets in the Western world. To date, these attacks have focused on espionage and disabling military networks. Most large Chinese companies are owned by the Chinese military or security services or by leaders recently departed from these organizations. There is some evidence that China's cyber warfare campaign has expanded to include industrial espionage against Western companies in support of Chinese companies. The primary goals of providing security are CIA, which is confidentiality, which is to ensure protection of data from unauthorized disclosure of customers and proprietary data, and integrity, which ensures that data has not been altered or destroyed. Security also uh, has a goal of availability, which is providing continuous operations of hardware and software so that parties involved can be assured of uninterrupted service. Some of the security threats include business continuity planning related threats such as disruptions, destruction of data, and disasters. So as you can see, security is not only concerned about activities that come from uh, perpetrators, it could be from natural disasters as well. Another type of threat are intrusions. With intrusions, hackers gain access to data, files, and resources, and with these unauthorized access, it is said to say that most of them come from internal employees and may result in industrial spying or fraud by changing the data. It is also important once uh, you have identified the threats to perform a risk assessment, and this is a key step which is required in order to secure a network. And through this process, level of risks are assigned to various threats. Some of the threats we just mentioned, there are a lot more threats than we just mentioned in the previous slide. And a spreadsheet is then used to prioritize them, um, and once they are prioritized, measures are then put in place to mitigate against those risks. It is almost impossible to protect an organization or one from all of the threats, but through this process of prioritizing, an organization can then spend resources on those threats that are more likely to occur, or should they occur, are more likely to cause uh, damage or affect the three goals that we identified: confidentiality, availability, and integrity. So the idea is to ensure business continuity uh, by making sure that hardware and data is going to be always available for internal use as well as available to any of the stakeholders. So organizations should therefore come up with a continuity plan, and the continuity plan should include the development of controls to prevent the events from happening. And should the events happen, the plan should then have also measures or steps in place that can be taken in order to recover from such disasters. So this is one area where failing to plan is really planning to fail. So it's really important for organizations to have a plan in place. So elements of a security policy, uh, along with these elements that we just talked about, it is also important for an organization to have a policy in place. A policy is the first, I would say, item in a line of defense for against any threats. Policies are what would deter the reasonable people from entering and uh, performing unauthorized activities. And so the policy should have the name of decision-making managers. It should include incident reporting system and response team, as well as the risk assessment with the priorities that we just discussed, as well as controls on all major access points to prevent or deter unauthorized external access. Controls, it should also have controls within the network to ensure internal users cannot exceed their authorized access. And it should balance controls to control network while not stopping legitimate access. And it should have we should include acceptable use, what is acceptable to perform when one is on a network, and also include a user training plan on security, and also testing and updating plans. All of these are good things to have in a security policy, and would provide what is known as a defense in depth. Best practice recommendation: start with a clear disaster recovery plan and solid security policies. This is the beginning. And then train individuals on data recovery and social engineering. Social engineering, these are techniques that are tried by or are used by people in order to gain unauthorized access. It could be phishing or requesting credentials in a way that will result in an individual getting those credentials when they are not supposed to. You're supposed to use routinely antivirus software, firewalls, physical security, intrusion detection, and encryption. Notice how the use of technologies the last on this list here. To start with, you want to start with a policy and then training, then also you need the technology. It is important, it has its place, but it is not a complete solution on its own. Then also the use of strong and centralized desktop management. This prohibits individual users to change settings and use regular reimaging of computers to prevent trojans and viruses. Install most recent security patches, prohibit external software downloads. So on most networks, you find that the updates and desktop management is done automatically in terms of updates and security patches. Another recommendation would be to use continuous content filtering, that is, scan all incoming data packets, and also consider the use of encryption for important information. And also the enforcement of these policies is important. Enforcement is what deters the majority of would-be perpetrators